أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى آل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين، والذين ذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على صاحب دعوة النبوية والصولة الحيدرية والعصمة الفاطمية والحلم الحسنية والشجاعة الحسينية والعبادة السجادية والمآثر الباقرية والآثار الجعفرية والعلوم الكاظمية والحجج الردبية والجود الثقبية والحيبة العسكرية والنقاوة النقبية والحيبة العسكرية والغيبة الإلهية. اللهم عجل فرجه وسهل مخرجه. أما بعد، فقد قال الله في كتابه الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وإذ قال ربك للملائكة إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة. صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the love of Amir Al-Mumineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For the hastening of the reappearance of the master of our time, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The day which we've entered upon is the 19th of Shahru Ramadan. We've entered upon the days of the musibah of Amir al-Mumineen. And it is upon this day, after the time of Fajr, that Jibreel, he descended and he said those lines which are fundamental in tonight's inquiry and tonight's subject matter. For in a way, tonight's majlis is an explanation of those lines of Jibreel, that after Amir al-Mumineen was struck, he cried out, "Tahaddamat wallah arkanul huda, infasamat wallah al-urwatul wudqa, qad qutila ibnu ammil Mustafa, qad qutila aliyun al-murtada." That he says these lines, that by Allah, the pillar of guidance has collapsed, and by Allah, that firm rope or handle has been cut off. The son of the uncle of the Prophet has been killed. Aliyun al-Murtada is no more. You find within these lines of Jibreel that he calls Amir al-Mu'mineen the pillar of guidance. And he describes him as that rope which connects the heavens and the earth. And from this discussion and these lines begins the subject matter of tonight's majlis, which is examining Amir al-Mu'mineen as al-Insan al-Kamil, or the perfect man. You see, the concept of al-Insan al-Kamil, the perfect man, is a concept which lies at the heart of Islamic Gnosticism and the Islamic spiritual tradition. For the perfect man within the Islamic spiritual tradition is seen as that individual who manifests the attributes of Allah, and he is that link which connects Allah with the cosmos, with the creation, and he serves as that link through which the supplication of the creation, it reaches Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. that in a way the perfect man is seen as Wajhullah. Of course, Allah literally does not have a face, but what does Wajhullah mean? The face of a person is that if you want to recognize someone, you recognize them through their face. In the same way, Ali is Wajhullah, that if you want to recognize Allah, then do it through the actions, the teaching, and the life of Amir Al-Mumineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib. And this is why that perfect man, he is also seen as the Hujjat of Allah, that proof that if his existence was not there, the system of the cosmos, it would collapse, as alluded to in many narrations and the Quran as well. For example, when you look within the narrations, you find the famous narration which states, لولا الحجة لساخت الأرض بأهلها. That if the proof of Allah was not upon this earth, the earth would collapse with its inhabitants. Further than that, you find a narration of Amir al-Mu'mineen which states, لا تخلو الأرض من قائم لله بحجته إما ظاهرا منشورا وإما خائفا مغمورا. He says that the earth is not devoid of one whom stands for Allah with his proof, either outwardly and widespread or hiddenly, and he is undistinguished. That these concepts, they go to show that there must be a proof of Allah upon this earth, and he must be there in every single time. And this is even seen within the Holy Quran in chapter 2 verse 30 when it states, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ, that when Allah, he said towards the angels, إِنِّي جَائِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً, that I am making upon this earth a vicegerent. You see this word ja'il over here. The property within this word that the Mufassireen have mentioned is that this is a continuous reality. That Allah did not say, I have made a vicegerent upon the earth. He is saying, I am making this vicegerent. Which goes to show this quality of making a vicegerent upon the earth is a quality which remains with Allah. That's why in each time period, there must be an individual who is Al-Insanul Kamil, that perfect man within his time period. And indeed tonight, we'll seek to analyze the role of Ali ibn Abi Talib as Al-Insanul Kamil. Now, when it comes to any discussion about Amir al-Mu'mineen, you don't know where to begin. You don't know where to stop. The mind, it falters when it thinks of praising Amir al-Mu'mineen. You know, I remember Ayatollah Jawadi Amuli in one of his books about Amir al-Mu'mineen. In the introduction, he has a beautiful introduction where he writes that although the hands of the writers, they shake, and the tongues of the speakers, they fall short, how can one describe that Sultan whom in Nahjul Balagha he describes himself by saying that I am as the summit, up to me no bird can soar, down from me the torrents pour. He says that although no one can praise this individual by seeking his generosity as alluded in his lines when he said, Saluni, Saluni, qabla an tafqiduni, that ask me before you lose me. We seek by this grace to present a small bounty in front of this individual. For this is that individual that from amongst the ummah of the Prophet, he was laysa kamithlihi shay, that there was none like him. And from amongst the companions of the Prophet, he was like the manifestation of the verse, وَلَمْ يَقُلْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ, that there is none who is his partner. And then he states that what Allah possesses in perfection by his essence, بِعَيْنِ ذَاتِهِ, the perfect man he possesses at that maqam of fakhr, at that maqam of poverty. That what Allah has in his essence of perfection, Amir al-Mu'mineen's perfection is one which is dependent upon Allah. That these are the lines of Ayatollah Jawadi Amuli about Amir al-Mu'mineen. So how does one praise this man? I remember Khalil ibn Ahmad al-Farahidi, a famous grammarian, the teacher of the famous grammarian Sibawayh, and the one to whom the first Arabic dictionary is ascribed to this man, Khalil ibn Ahmad al-Farahidi. Khalil ibn Ahmad al-Farahidi, when he was asked about Amir al-Mumineen, he said these lines which are a masterpiece in Arabic prose, that he says what? He says, احتياج الكل إليه واستغناؤه عن الكل دليل على أنه إمام الكل في الكل. He says the necessity of everyone towards him and him being free of needing them is evidence to the fact that this man is the leader of everyone and everything. You see, the subject of Amir al-Mu'mineen as Al-Insan al-Kamil is a subject of great vastness. But the specific area which I seek to focus in on tonight is examining the spiritual dimension of Amir al-Mu'mineen by focusing on his understanding of Allah the Creator. It is through this discussion that we'll begin to realize that what is the reality of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Now when we begin this discussion, the first point to note is that when it comes to Islamic inquiry, Islamic spirituality, and the Islamic teaching, there are two fundamental sources. The first is the Quran, the book of Allah. The second is the Sunnah, the actions of the Prophet, which of course can only be explained fully by the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. That these are the two fundamental sources, and you find that Amir al-Mu'mineen is seen as the peak of spirituality, for he internalized both of these sources. It should be the goal of every Muslim to implement the teachings of the Quran into their life and to implement the Sunnah of the Prophet into their life. And not just the Sunnah on the outward level, but the Sunnah in the sense that spiritual substance and reality of the Prophet, which the Quran it alludes to when it says, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ, that, O Prophet of God, you have been given that greatest of character. When you look at the reality of the situation, you find there is a strong connection between the souls of the believers and the reality of the Prophet. For everything which we try to actualize from our potential according to our capacity, Rasul Allah, he manifests it at the maximum level. And it is this connection which elevates us. That, in other words, everything good we have is from the reality of the Prophet of God. And the Quran, it says in chapter 68, verse 20 of verse number 3, it says in verse number 3, النبي أولى بالمؤمنين من أنفسهم, that the Prophet of God is closer to the believers than they are towards themselves. Now this is that first source which I mentioned, the Sunnah. And indeed, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he shows an affinity with the Prophet which none other of the believers, they show this reality. For the Prophet of God, he says to Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ya Ali, anta ka nafsi, that, O Ali, you are like myself, O Ali. Then in a different narration, he says, Ya Ali, anta minni wa ana minka, that, O Ali, you are from me and I am from you. And after all, this echoes the Quran, the verse of Mubahila, which states, فَقُلْ تَعَالَوْا نَدْعُوا أَبْنَاءَنَا وَأَبْنَاءَكُمْ وَنِسَاءَنَا وَنِسَاءَكُمْ وَأَنفُسَنَا وَأَنفُسَكُمْ. It states that, oh, go and call them. It states, go, tell them, come. And say, we will call our children, you will call your children. We will call our women, you will call yours. We will call ourselves, you will call yourselves. Now this explanation of Ali being the nafs of Rasulullah, it has an inward manifestation and it has an outward reality as well. From the batin, it goes to show that Ali is created from the same light as Rasul Allah. But you find from the outward, it goes to show the closeness in the relationship between these two. As you see in Nahjul Balagha, when Amir Al-Mumineen describes his relationship with Rasulullah, he uses a very interesting analogy. You know, whenever you have a simile, whenever you have an analogy, we should always look for what is called sababut tashbih, the reason of that analogy. Amir Al-Mumineen states in Nahjul Balagha that I used to follow the Prophet of God in the way a baby camel follows the footsteps of its mother. Why does Amir Al-Mumineen use the example of a camel? The camel is that example that when you look at the young of a camel, it follows the footsteps of their mother. That the exact same spot, by walking underneath the mother, it takes the exact same footsteps. It does not go ahead of its mother. It doesn't fall behind its mother. It is there side by side. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, I never went ahead of Rasulullah. When Rasulullah is calling me, I never lagged behind like other individuals. I was there with the Prophet of God. And at this way, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he internalized one of the two fundamental sources of Islamic spirituality. But the other fundamental source which I mentioned is the book of Allah, the Quran. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he internalized this as well, and the dalil and the proof are the narrations of the Prophet. The Prophet of God, he says, Aliyun ma'al Qur'an wal Qur'anu ma'a Aliyin. He says that Ali is with the Quran and the Quran is with Ali ibn Abi Talib. Now once again, this hadith has an outward reality, it has an inward reality. From the inward reality of this hadith, it goes to show that every single attribute within the Quran is found within Ali ibn Abi Talib, where he was mentioned right next to the Quran. For if the Quran, it says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Dalikal Kitabu La Rayba Fi Hudan Lil Muttaqeen, that this is that book, there is no doubt within this book, it is a guide for the pious, for the God conscience. Then there is no doubts within Amir al-Mu'mineen. He is Imam al-Muttaqeen, the leader of the God-fearing. You know, doesn't Amir al-Mu'mineen say, Lo kushipa liyal ghita mazdattu yaqeena, that if all of the veils were removed, it would not increase my certainty. Only the one who has no doubts is at this level. Only the one who is compared with the Quran is at this level. Now I'll give you another example. The Quran, it says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Shahru Ramadan, Alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran, Hudan lin-nasi wa bayyinatin min al-huda wal-furqan. How is the Quran described in this verse? It was described as a guide for mankind, as a clear proof, and as a furqan, a divider between haqq and batil. Allama Tabatabai, when explaining this verse, he says the difference between hudan lin-nas and a clear proof, bayinat, is this, is that it is a guide for mankind because humanity at their basic level is just guided. But when one brings the Quran into their life, it becomes a clear proof at every single level. In the same way, Ali ibn Abi Talib has a universal reality, that whether you are Muslim or not Muslim, you benefit from the personality of Amir al-Mu'mineen. That you look at an individual like George Jordak. When George Jordak wanted to write a book, he writes the book Imam Ali, the voice of human justice. You know, they said to George Jordak, what inspired you to write this book? You know, it stated that at one point he had a friend. His friend gave him Nahjul Balagha. He takes Nahjul Balagha. He says, when did the author of this book live? The person says he lived roughly 1300 years ago. He says, what am I going to do with this book from a man who lived 1300 years ago? He says, I thought I would still give it a chance. I began to open the book, I began reading it, and it was talking about a scientific principle which I have never heard. So I put this book, I made the decision I'll never open it again. He says, later on in my life, as I was watching the television, I saw that it was speaking about the same scientific discovery which Ali ibn Abi Talib, he mentions in Nahjul Balagha. He says after that time, 30 or 40 times in my life I have read Nahjul Balagha, and each time I gained something I didn't gain before. You know, it's a question of self-reflection that if a Christian can read Nahjul Balagha this many times, have we as the followers of Ahlul Bayt even opened this book this many times? But you find he opened the book, he opened that reality. Ali ibn Abi Talib, like the Quran, is that guide for mankind, but he is also the clear proof. The Prophet, he said, Ya Ali, he says to Amir Al-Mumineen, Anta tubayyinu li ummati makhtalafu fihi ba'di, that, oh Ali, that you will clarify for my ummah what they will differ about after me. The verse Rasulullah, the word Rasulullah uses is tubayyinu, the same word which is at the root of bayyinat, that they come from the same word. But at the same time, this chapter of the Quran, this verse of the Quran, it described the Quran as a furqan, as a divider between haqq and batil. You find the same reality is found within Amir al-Mu'mineen. As the Prophet of God, he says, Anta qasimun nari wal jannah. That, oh Ali, you are the divider between heaven and hell. You know, there was a non-Shia scholar, he was asked about this hadith, that is this hadith authentic? He says, why isn't it authentic? The man says, it doesn't make sense to me. He says, it's very simple. The Prophet of God said, oh Ali, none will love you except a believer. None will hate you except a hypocrite, O Ali. He says the explanation lies within this. In this manner, Ali, he differentiates between heaven and hell. So I said from the internal level that Ali ibn Abi Talib, he has the attributes of the Quran. But the external of this hadith is that Amir al-Mu'mineen, he internalized the teachings of the Quran in his lifetime. That these two fundamental sources of Islamic spirituality, the Sunnah and the Quran, they were within the being and the wujud of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And this was the first point of tonight's discussion. But this bridges me to my second point. That what is the outcome of internalizing the Quran and the Sunnah in its fullest reality as Amir al-Mu'mineen did? There is one existential outcome and there is one outcome which is seen in the worldview of Ali ibn Abi Talib. The existential outcome is that Amir al-Mu'mineen is greater than every single prophet except Rasul Allah, and he is greater than all of the malaika. And this proof is found once again within the hadith, as in Rasul Allah, he says, and this hadith is even narrated by Ahmad bin Hanbal in his Musnad. He says, Man arada an yandura ila Adama fi ilmihi, wa ila Nuhin fi azmihi, wa ila Ibrahim fi hilmihi, wa ila Musa fi haybatih, wa ila Isa fi zuhdih. فَلْيَنْظُرْ إِلَىٰ عَلِيِّ بْنِ أَبِي طَالِبٍ. What does the Prophet say? The Prophet says, the one who wants to look at Adam in his knowledge, and the one who wants to look at Ibrahim in his forbearance, and the one who wants to look at Nuh in his determination, and the one who wants to look at Musa in his grandeur, in this aura that he has, and the one who wants to look at Isa in his asceticism, then look at Ali ibn Abi Talib. That this is the shawahid and the proof for Amir al-Mu'mineen greater than the Anbiya except Rasulullah. But at the second level, the internalization of these twin sources of Islamic spirituality, it made Ali ibn Abi Talib greater than the Malaika. For the hadith which has been narrated from multiple sources, it states that one day Amir al-Mu'mineen is within the mosque. A man walks into the mosque. He begins to show respect towards Amir al-Mu'mineen. Rasul Allah says, oh man, why are you showing this level of respect? The man, he says, I am Jibreel. I have come in the form of a human being. And I am showing the respect that a student shows towards his teacher. The man says, Ali ibn Abi Talib is your teacher. What is the reality of this? He says that when Allah, He created me, I was in front of the arsh of Allah. Allah, He said to me, Man ana wa man ant, who am I and who are you? When Allah, He asked this question, I was so mesmerized by the light of the throne that I was not able to answer. But at that moment, I heard a voice whisper towards me. That voice, it said, Qul Anta Rabbul Jalil wa ana abduka dhalil. Say that you are the Lord with grandeur and I am your lowly servant. I said this line to Allah. I said, Anta Allah Rabbul Jalil wa ana abduka dhalil. When I said this line, Allah, He liked my reply so much that He made me in charge of the wahi and the revelation from Adam to Rasul Allah. But at that moment, I thought to myself that I would turn around and look who whispered this answer towards me. When I turned around, I saw Ali ibn Abi Talib. That this is the reality. Al-Insanul Kamil is a teleological concept that the insan, that perfect man, is higher than every other aspect of existence and creation. But as I said earlier, that the internalization of these two sources, they have another manifestation. And that manifestation is the worldview of Ali ibn Abi Talib. You see, the worldview of the Imam is the view of Tawheed and one who has understood the reality of Allah. And I'll give you one example from the life of the Imam. It's stated that on the day of Jamal, a man, he comes up to Amir Al-Mumineen in the midst of the battle. He says to the Imam, Ya Amir Al-Mumineen, is Allah one? Imagine in the middle of the battle, is going down at that moment. A man just comes up to Amir Al-Mumineen. He was a Bedouin and he says, is Allah one? Is this a time to ask this question? You find the narration, it states that all of the people, they jump towards that person. They say, do you not see that Amir al-Mu'mineen, his heart is divided, meaning that Amir al-Mu'mineen is busy at this moment? You find Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says a line which shows the worldview of Ali ibn Abi Talib. What does the Imam say? He says, leave him and let him ask this question. For what he is asking is what we want from the people. That Amir al-Mu'mineen goes to show what he wants from the people is a fundamental understanding of Tawheed and the reality of Allah. That at the foundation of one's every movement, every intention, should lie this concept of seeking to understand Allah. That's why Ali ibn Abi Talib, he let that individual ask the question even in the midst of the battle. That this battle is for Tawheed. Every aspect of the life of Ali ibn Abi Talib was to establish the oneness of Allah. And this time period, this battle of Jamal or Siffin or any of these battles, for the establishment of the understanding of Allah. That's why Amir al-Mu'mineen, he continues by explaining what it means that Allah is one in this narration. And you find that this narration is found in Kitab al-Tawheed of Shaykh al-Suduq on page number 83, published in Lebanon or Qum, both of them are page 83 if you wanted the exact source towards it. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says that when you say Allah is one, two aspects of this are appropriate and two aspects of this are not appropriate. He says the two aspects that are not appropriate is that if you say Allah is one with the intention that He is one numerically, then this is incorrect. For the one who has no second cannot be counted numerically. Man la tani lahu la yadkhul Fi Babil A'dad, as Amir Al-Mumineen says, that when you say Allah is one, it's not that we are saying one in the sense that there is no second or third. No, there's a different sense which Amir Al-Mumineen will explain. He says the second aspect of this is that if you are saying Allah is one of a type of a species, then this is incorrect. In other words, that if you are saying Allah is one of a greater group, this is incorrect. Then he says, as for those two aspects which are correct pertaining to the oneness of Allah, the first of them is that when you say He is one and you mean that there is none like Him, that when we say Allah is one, this means that it is not possible at all for there to be a second with the likes of Allah. And then he says, the second aspect which is correct when you say Allah is one is the true meaning of when you say Al-Ahad. Al-Ahad, it means, as Amir Al-Mu'mineen says, that Allah cannot be divided in His wujud, He cannot be divided by the intellect, and He cannot be divided by the imagination as well. That you see Amir Al-Mu'mineen, in the midst of the battle, he gives an explanation, the likes of which other individuals, they didn't have the capacity to give in their times. As in Ibn Sina used to say, Ibn Sina has been considered as one of the greatest thinkers from the Muslim world. Ibn Sina used to say that the position of Ali amongst the companions is the position of the spiritual amongst the material. So you find this was the second point. The second point is that the worldview of Ali ibn Abi Talib, when we examine him as Al-Insanul Kamil, is that his worldview is a view of Tawheed. But the third point for this discussion is this, is that at the core of the virtues of Ali ibn Abi Talib lies this connection which he had with Allah. You know, the goal of spirituality is to love Allah and to become the beloved of Allah. The core of spirituality is to be a muhib and become the mahbub of Allah, if I can use the proper Arabic terminology. You find there is only one man in history whose love of Allah and Allah loving him has been guaranteed by the tongue of revelation, by the tongue of the Prophet. That tongue which would not speak except by the command of Allah. وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. It's stated on the day of Khaybar. Each of the companions, the Prophet said, لَأُعْتِيَنَّ الرَّايَةَ غَدًا رَجُلًا كَرَّارًا وَغَيْرَ فَرَّارٍ يُحِبُّ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ يُحِبُّهُ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. He says that tomorrow I'll give the flag towards a man, somebody who doesn't run away, somebody whom loves Allah and His Prophet, and Allah and His Prophet, they love him. You know, that flag upon that day, it was given to none other than Amir Al-Mu'mineen. But if you want to know Ali's status as the certified backbone of Islamic spirituality after the Prophet, it's found within this narration. For from the tongue of the Prophet, the love of Ali for the Prophet and Allah was established, and the love of Allah and the Prophet for Ali ibn Abi Talib was established. And this is that essence which was at the core of Ali ibn Abi Talib. For after this battle, after this battle of Khaybar, they see Amir al-Mu'mineen sitting upon the ground. As he's sitting upon the ground, the Imam is struggling to break a piece of bread. They say, "Oh Ali, what is this? You lifted a door 40 couldn't lift," according to some narrations. Yet over here, you are struggling to break a piece of bread. The Imam says, "When I lifted the door of Khaybar, it was through the strength of my spirit, the strength of my ruh. And over here, when I break this bread, it is through the strength of my body." Highlighting the core of Ali ibn Abi Talib's fadail come from that connection he had with Allah. And Al-Insan al-Kamil, my fourth and final point before I come towards the musibah, is the one whom in existence has the highest level of submission. His submission is to the extent that when he acts, it's as if how Allah wants him to act, so he becomes Yadullah. When he sees, it's where Allah would want him to see, so he becomes Ainullah. When he is that vision for understanding Allah, he becomes Wajhullah. And this is even proven within the Quran and within history as well. People say that how is Ali ibn Abi Talib Yadullah? What does this mean? You know, the Quran, it says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُبَايِعُونَكَ إِنَّمَا يُبَايِعُونَ اللَّهَ يَدُ اللَّهِ فَوْقَ أَيْدِيهِمْ. It says, O Prophet, those who pledge allegiance to you have pledged allegiance to Allah, and the hand of Allah resides over their hand. You know, it's stated upon the day of Ghadir, that day where the Prophet of God, he openly announces one more time the wilayah of Amir al-Mumineen. After this announcement was made, everyone was pledging allegiance towards Amir al-Mumineen. First, the women, they went. You know, even on the day of Ghadir, it was ladies first. The narrations, they differ. They state that one of them states that Amir al-Mu'mineen put a bowl of water, a container of water. He would place his hand on one side of the container, the women on the other side to pledge allegiance. But no, the second narration states there was a piece of cloth. The Imam would hold one side of the cloth, the women the other. But after the women, they gave allegiance, you find the turn of the men came to give allegiance towards Amir al-Mu'mineen. But when they were giving that bay'ah, that allegiance towards the Imam would keep his hands like this. It wasn't like this. That his palm was facing downwards. They go towards Rasul Allah. They say, Ya Rasul Allah, we're giving allegiance towards Ali. But Ali is doing something strange. He is putting his hand downwards. His palm isn't facing up. Rasulullah says, go ask Ali ibn Abi Talib yourselves why he's doing this. When they went towards Amir al-Mu'mineen, they asked him. Amir al-Mu'mineen said, I am not asking you for allegiance. You are giving it towards me. When you ask, your hands are facing upwards. When we make dua, what do? Our hands, they face upward. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, you are giving it towards me. They say, oh Ali, do you have any proof that the hand should be like this? Ali ibn Abi Talib says, have you not read the Quran? إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُبَايِعُونَكَ إِنَّمَا يُبَايِعُونَ اللَّهَ يَدُ اللَّهِ فَوْقَ أَيْدِيهِمْ, and the hand of Allah resides over their hand. You find this is that reality of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. And the subject of Amir al-Mu'mineen as Insanul Kamil is a subject of great depth and mysticism and spirituality, and I don't have the time to go into this discussion of depth. But it's stated upon this night that that person who is al-Insanul Kamil, that perfect man, that is also that person who feels the most loneliness. Why? Because he has at that highest level of reality, when he sees those at the lower level not being able to take from that his knowledge, those not achieving their full potential, it hurts the Imam. That's why it's stated one day that the Imam was going towards the outskirts of Kufa. As he's going towards the outskirts of Kufa, Kumail, he's following behind the Imam. He's watching the Imam, and what does he see? He sees that the Imam, he goes towards the desert. He places his fist within the ground. Kumail, he says that, oh my master, why are you doing this? Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, oh Kumail, my heart has so many secrets, but I have no one to give them towards. So I come towards the desert. I put my fist within the ground and I give it towards the earth. Another narration states that Imam Ali used to speak in towards a well. You know, the ulama, they discussed what is the symbolism behind this well. Many of them, they said the symbolism is that it symbolizes the loneliness of Ali ibn Abi. That what is the pain of Amir al-Mu'mineen? You know, I told you yesterday that the musib of Ali, it began in Medina. It began at the death of the Prophet. It began at a burning door. It began at the graveside of Fatimah Zahra. You know, it stated that Amir al-Mu'mineen, he fell asleep on the grave of Zahra. As he fell asleep on the grave of Zahra, he sees Fatima within his dreams. Zahra says, "Oh Ali, go back, for your daughters are waiting for you, oh Ali. Your children are waiting for you, oh Ali." You find it is on this day that Zainab and Kulthum, they became yatim. In reality, the entire ummah of Rasulullah became yatim upon this day. You know, Imam Amir Al-Mumineen, in the nights of Ramadan, each night he would break his iftar, his fast, at a different house of one of his children. One night the house of Imam Hassan, one night the house of Imam Al-Hussein. But upon this night he broke his fast at the house of Kulthum. You want to know how Amir Al-Mu'mineen, he broke his fast? His daughter, she places in front of the Imam, she places bread, she places salt, she places some milk. When Amir al-Mu'mineen, he sees this, he says, "Oh my daughter, when have you known your father to eat more than one of the blessings of Allah?" Kulthum, she says that I wanted to take the salt away so my father could drink from the milk and the bread. But as I went to take the salt, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, "No, take that milk away." Upon this day, as Amir al-Mu'mineen went towards Masjid al-Kufa, your Imam, he broke his fast with salt and some bread. It's stated that after he finishes this meal, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he spends this night wandering, that he's praying. Sometimes he would go outside. He would look at the sky and he would say, "Hiya al-laylatul lati wa'adani habibi Rasulullah." He says, this is that night which my beloved Rasulullah, he promised me. At a different point, he would say, "Ayyatuha dunya ghurri ghayri." He would say, "Oh, this world, go and deceive someone else." Amir al-Mu'mineen, he spent this night in this way. You know, it's stated that Amir al-Mu'mineen, as he was leaving his house for the time of Fajr, this is that final time Amir al-Mu'mineen would leave the house walking. For the next time Amir al-Mu'mineen would come towards the house, it would be after Ibn Muljam strikes him upon the head. You know, it's stated that there would be a number of birds, a number of ducks in front of the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen. As he would be leaving the house, they would get in the way of the Imam. Kulthum would say that, "Oh my father, I've never seen the animals behave in this way." The Imam says, "Oh Kulthum, take care of them. The reason they're behaving in this way is because they know what will happen." Kulthum says, "Oh my father, I wish for you not to go upon this day." Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, "Oh my daughter, what Allah has written will occur." You find the Imam, he goes towards Masjid al-Kufa. As he goes towards Masjid al-Kufa upon this day, Amir al-Mu'mineen himself called the adhan. He said, "Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar." You know, after Amir al-Mu'mineen, he called the adhan, he went around to go and wake up the people sleeping within the mosque. But as he was waking them up, there was one man who was sleeping upon his stomach. Below his stomach was a sword. Look at the mercy of the Imam, that he wakes up his own killer upon this day. He says, "Oh man, don't sleep on your stomach. Either sleep on the right side, for this is the sleep of the ulama, or sleep upon the left side, for this is the sleep of the hukama, or sleep upon your back, for this is the sleep of the anbiya." You find Amir al-Mu'mineen, he begins to go and lead the prayer. He says, "Allahu Akbar." The final prayer of Amir al-Mu'mineen in the mosque, it's begun. The Imam, he goes in towards ruku. Then he stands up. He goes in towards sujood. That first sajda, Ibn Muljam, he goes. He
strikes Amir Al-Mumineen upon the head. The narration it says, فَوَقَعَ عَلَى وَجْهِهِ. Ali ibn Abi Talib, his face it hits the ground. He says, Bismillah wa billah wa ala millati Rasul Allah fustu bi Rabbil Kaaba. What does the Imam say? The Imam, he says, in the name of Allah, by Allah, on the path of the Prophet, I've been successful by the Lord of the Kaaba. Some of the narrations, they state that Imam al-Hasan, he finishes the prayer. The walls of Masjid al-Kufa, they begin to shake. It is at that point Jibreel, he descends. He says his lines, تَحَدَّمَتْ وَاللَّهِ أَرْكَانُ الْهُدَى انفصمت والله العروة الوثقى قد قتل ابن عم المصطفى قد قتل علي المرتضى. He says Ali has been killed. You know, this wouldn't be the last time that Jibreel descends. It would be the plains of Karbala. The son of Ali would be on the ground. Shibr would be on the chest of Hussein. He would raise the sword. At that point, Jibreel would descend, but his wording would be different. He wouldn't say قتل الحسين بكربلاء. He'll say ذبح الحسين. That Hussein wasn't killed in Karbala. Hussein was slaughtered. على لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين. ماتم حسين.